Positive Lens Podcasts. I'm your host, Scott T. Each week, we will bring you positive law enforcement news stories from across the globe, shared by departments and citizens like yourself. In our Getting to Know Your Local Leo segment, we will speak with a member of the law enforcement community about everyday life and most things non-law enforcement, as we hope to adjust your focus so you see that members of your local law enforcement community are not much different than you and me. Hey guys, welcome to episode 40. I'm your host, Scott T. And in today's Getting to Know Your Local Leo episode, we have the pleasure of speaking with and getting to know Officer Haley Mullen of the Laurel Park Police Department in Western North Carolina. Here, we will learn about her transition from studying cellular and molecular biology to a law enforcement career, the heartbreaking personal tragedy that impacted her community policing, and how her experience and understanding of bones led to a very unique and creative business named Belle Bones Co. Haley began her career with the Hendersonville Police Department and has developed a strong interest in leadership, training, and communication, especially when it comes to mentoring newer officers and building trust within the community. She's a wife, dog mom, and enjoys balancing life between police work, creativity, and family. Let's get to know Haley. Please welcome to the podcast from the Laurel Park Police Department in Western North Carolina, Officer Haley Mullen. Good afternoon, Haley. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. I know you often have busy shifts as an officer. So
yeah, glad
it's
to be
great
here.
to have you. Awesome. So I want to get right into it with you because I know as an officer you're running in between shifts on a regular basis. Even when your day is off, you probably feel like you're on a shift. So to go right to it for you, can you tell us a little about yourself? Where were you born? Where did you grow up? What was life like as young Haley Mullen?
Oh, well, so I recently got married. So actually my maiden name is Thompson. So as a young Haley Thompson, I was born in Asheville, North Carolina. And then I moved to a small county when I was 6 called Rutherford County, North Carolina. And at the time there was not much but Walmart. Now we're I'm back in Rutherford County. And now we're kind of stepping up in the world, and there's a Chick-fil-A and Starbucks. So we're kind of moving up slowly but surely. But I was an only child until I was about, seven, I guess. Me and my sister are 7 years apart. So good childhood. My parents stay married. They're still married. And we just lived a small town life. I went to elementary, middle, and high school here in Rutherford County. And then I ended up moving back to Asheville for college. So.
Excellent. I want to say congratulations on the recent marriage. That's fabulous to hear. So that's
Thank
awesome.
You.
And then congratulations to your parents too, because that's something you don't hear a lot these days. A long testament to marriage is a beautiful thing. So that's awesome. I know you mentioned Asheville. Just want to go to. I know they went through the storms a couple years ago. Was family impacted? Friends impacted?
Yeah. So that hurricane was awful. Especially being a law enforcement officer. I mean, we all got called in, of course, but we worked days long shifts, and the most that we've ever worked is 12 hours in a row. So to work 24 plus hours, I mean, everything was flooded and it was really bad. My parents had a tree on their building, and then I had a couple trees fall on my fence and barely missed my house.
Wow.
And then my family in Asheville, they were out of power for like 2 or more weeks, and then they didn't have clean water for like over a month. And I mean, Asheville's still recovering. It was a really bad storm. Nobody expected it because, we hear, oh, there's a hurricane, and everyone's like, okay, we're going to get a little bit of rain. So nobody was prepared. It was awful.
Right. You're usually in North Carolina, you're thinking of storms. You're expecting them to come from the East Coast. You're not expecting Asheville to hit on the western side.
Yeah, I'm convinced that hurricane scooted over and then got stuck in the mountain range and just went around and around or something, because again, whenever we hear hurricanes and we're getting the aftermath of them, it's just a bunch of rain, but that was terrible.
Devastating. A couple people I've spoken to in the Carolina region have mentioned that even now, yeah, they still have trouble, even dealing with the insurance still almost 18 months later now. They're still
Hmm.
trying to get through that, which is, it's horrible. And I know that, and we're going to stay off the politics, but I know what there's concerns with FEMA, they're getting insurance in there, I mean, getting resources to you guys was really devastating, the amount of time it
Yeah.
took to do that. And
It was
like I
awesome
said,
though to see like just surrounding states. They knew how hard we were impacted, and they sent supplies and their law enforcement down to help. And it was just really cool to see everybody get together. And I mean, even I think the agency I was with at the time, we had somebody as far as like Texas helping us or something like that. I can't exactly remember, but I mean people from all over were here.
yeah, and there's a lot of great things our country does, contrary to popular belief. And that is one of the things you know is when storms happen, you get help from everywhere. People come
Hmm.
together, they set aside all views, like my neighbor needs help. And that neighbor could be a state, that neighbor could be a county, that neighbor could be somewhere else, right? In a different city. But the fact that people came in to provide support, I think, is a beautiful thing. And it's one of those times that you see bonding happen. It just always
Yeah,
happens over tragedy, but it's still that happens. So I'm
for
glad to
sure.
see, I'm guessing from your family, like I said, you didn't have structural damage to the homes or to individual loss of life, but you still obviously had recovery. I'm sure, like I said, being a law enforcement officer in that area, you saw a lot of stuff you probably didn't want to see.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you grew up in the town, so you went to school there and thing. What were you like as a student? What kind of student were you?
I was a big nerd. I actually graduated. I graduated high school a year early because I was taking college classes while I was in like the 10th grade. Um, so I graduated. I could have graduated like a year and a half early, but I kind of just slacked off a little bit so that way I could at least enjoy a little bit. But yeah, I finished high school in 3 years. So I graduated in 2014. And my year or the 10-year reunion, I wanted to go with like my original graduating class, which would have been 2015. So they had their reunion last year, but I didn't get to go. So, but it's just crazy to think that was 11 years ago.
Yeah, how quickly it goes, right?
Crazy.
Now, you said you were a big nerd. So, what
Mhm.
was the inspiration? Was it like a situation where you just were like, I just want to get done? Or were you just always an overachiever? Like, how did that come about?
I'm good at schoolwork. And so again, my sister was young and my parents, they both worked full time. And so I babysat my sister. Um, so I couldn't do sports or anything like that. So really all that I could do to um, advance myself, I guess, is excel in schoolwork. So that's what I did.
And then you took that path though, right to college. You went to Western Carolina University and you study, I think you said biology.
Yeah,
So, how did that go? What was that experience like? Because you graduated early and now you're starting college, that means early too.
yeah. So I went to Asheville Buncombe Technical Community College for 2 years and got my Associate of Science. And that's in Asheville. And then I transferred to Western Carolina University and I got a bachelor's in cellular and molecular biology and then a bachelor's in forensic anthropology with a minor in pre-medicine. So my intentions were to be a medical examiner, um, but life happens, and that's not what ended up happening for me. So, but as far as like college, I loved it. Forensic anthropology is a really cool field. Um, I did. I took advantage of every single opportunity I had in college as far as like the forensic anthropology side. So Western Carolina, they have the second, I believe, what's called a body farm in the United States. Do you know what
Okay.
that is?
I only know it by name, not by detail.
Okay. Well, basically, it's where when somebody passes away, if they want to donate their body for scientific research,
Okay.
these colleges will put them on the body farm. So the University of Tennessee was the first, and then Western, like I said, I believe was the second or the third. Um, but it's just people that have donated themselves for scientific purposes. So I worked on that farm, and then we had a human remains lab, and I worked in there, and then I went to Romania for a month and excavated human remains from a medieval church from the 14th century. So
That had to be fascinating.
yeah, it was really cool. It was like a group of us that were in the forensic anthropology program at Western, and this this guy in Romania, it was his ancestors, and he wanted to know more about him, so he let us excavate this land, and it was an experience. That was my first time out of the country, and I mean, it's pretty extreme.
Yeah, I mean, first time out of the country going to Romania, that's a pretty robust trip.
Yeah, and it was in the middle of nowhere in Romania.
I don't know how much there is in Romania. You know, you have this idea that when you think of Romania, like the old Russia, right? Just this cold area. There's not a lot there. But
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be, like I said, an amazing experience. But now to go back to, you said, like the molecular biology and working the cells. Yeah, those are things that you usually hear about medical. I've talked to police officers that have doctorates. I've talked to police officers that have various different degrees. I don't think any of them have any experience with their undergrad being in anything molecular or any biology of that nature. So what led the transfer to law enforcement? Because those are two very different fields. I mean, yes, you could use those skills as an officer when you're investigating and you're doing work in the lab, but how did you transfer that to law enforcement?
Well, I when I graduated from Western, I applied for a forensic scientist position with the state lab, and was fresh out of college, so they didn't pick me. And then I was like, well, maybe I should be an evidence tech or something. I don't know, or some sort of, I don't know. I didn't really know, but I reached out to Hendersonville Police Department and asked if they had any kind of evidence technician positions or anything that I could use my degrees for. And they were like, yeah, but she's not retired yet, but you could come work for us. We have some patrol positions open. And I was like, okay. And so I just kind of tried it, and never would have guessed that I would be doing this. If you would have asked me 7 years ago, I would have been like, probably not. But here I am, and I can't imagine doing anything else. I couldn't imagine being a forensic scientist now. I couldn't imagine. I probably could be a medical examiner, but I think the repetitiveness might get to me. This is now I'm just used to something. It's every day is different, and I have to have that for myself now. So,
I guess the question also is, did he ever retire? The evidence technician?
she did not. She's still there, and she's great. I love her, but
Now, did you ever get, in these 7 years, have you been able to utilize the medical background though? And like, I know, like I said, you're a patrol officer, but within your department, you also have some of the flexibility that because of the size, you get to have the detective title when necessary, if it's called into play, whatnot. So have you had in your current role a chance to actually utilize that training that you had from college?
um, not not yet. I've had a chance to utilize my connections from college to help uh, a fellow agency, but I've not been utilized like that yet. I think they kind of want to keep you. They don't want you to mingle those things, right? Because then you might introduce bias. So, like for the same reason why I couldn't stay as a reserve officer and try to be a forensic scientist, like you can't do both because you'll have that bias aspect where you know if there's a crooked cop and they say, well, this is how it was because I have this medical degree or whatever, they
Right.
they they don't want anybody to have the opportunity to lie and mess up evidence. So does that make
That's
sense?
true. No, I know it does, and I've actually never thought about that. 'Cause, I think about. I'm just thinking of chain of custody in general. If you're the person who's taking it from the scene, then you're the person who's processing the evidence, then you're the person who's given the facts of the evidence you collected. There's a lot of potential for a corrupt person to do
Mm-hmm.
something there. So
Yeah.
yeah, I never thought about that, but it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So so you said you've been in the career for 7 years, and you can't imagine doing anything different. But what would you say would be the greatest accomplishment you've had in the 7 years so far?
Well, I've been in it for five, almost 5 years. But so 7 years ago when I was in college is kind of what I was saying about like I wouldn't
Okay.
have imagined that I'd be here. But anyways,
I say
I
greatest accomplishment too. It could be an accomplishment or just the most rewarding aspect of the career that you've enjoyed so far.
yeah, I think that I like the community aspect of the job. I feel like I make the most impact that way. So, I mean, for example, there was a she was autistic. Um, I think she was also a little bit special needs in other ways, but I can't exactly remember her diagnosis. But she was 17 and she had a lot of issues, and we ended up dealing with her every single day. And a lot of officers, they would kind of lose their patience, and she was afraid of God or men. And I don't know. I think I'm actually not a very patient person, but with people like that, or the elderly population, or people with mental crises, like I'm pretty patient, and I feel like I can build a bond with them and they remember me. And I know less than a year ago, she had mentioned my name and asked about me, and I haven't seen her in 3 years. And like it's things like that. Like I know that I made some sort of lasting impact because I was always patient with her. I always volunteered to be the one to go out to those calls with her, and because she couldn't help it, and these people, some people can't help it, and they need grace. And I feel like that's the most rewarding aspect of this job is helping those that can't help themselves.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I'm glad you actually used that example, Haley, because everyone has this image that all those in law enforcement love the idea of apprehending suspects, locking people up, throwing them behind jail, solving crimes, solving murder, solving whether it's a rape, molestation. Those have a reward because you're getting something for the victim, right? You're trying to help that side of it, the family, whomever's there. But in this case, it's a direct reflection of your service to the community, which is not what people view as the role of law enforcement, right? They always think of apprehension,
Hmm.
enforcing law, writing speeding tickets. Everyone thinks that the quote unquote cop on television, right? That they solve a murder in 12 hours. But the reality of it
Yeah.
is that you had a relationship with, I say a relationship, professional relationship with an individual in the community who needed your help and needed your assistance, and you treated her probably with respect. You said you had patience with her, and this individual. Now the fact a year later they remember you, and it's not because, oh, Officer Mullen arrested me, Officer Mullen did this to me. It's no, Officer Mullen helped me. So I
Hmm.
think it's really a great story that you share there because it speaks to the volume of the impact that officers can have in the communities they serve by doing the everyday thing, the being
Right.
the good person, being the nice person. And that's probably something you would have possibly done with this individual if you met them outside of uniform and it just happened to cross paths and needed help. Right? It's one
Yeah.
of those things that just shows who you are. So that's it's a great story. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, other things that now this mentioned individual, she was going through struggles. A lot of people in their professional lives encounter struggles as well, and they still have to show up to work every day. Um, Law enforcement officers are not immune to that. You guys have challenges in personal lives and everything as well. Is there a story you're comfortable or a challenge you're comfortable sharing with us that you've had to encounter and then still show up every day? Because your department's relying on you, the community's relying on you, and you still had to make it happen. And what that challenge was, and how you overcame it to keep showing up every day.
Yeah. So in 2023, I lost my son. So
Oh,
I did
I'm
take a
sorry.
couple months off work. I could not I could not show up every day after that. So I did take a couple months off just to kind of get my mind back right. But it was pretty difficult to come back and see some calls involving children and things like that. But actually, that individual I was telling you about, that is when we started to interact with her, was after I had come back to work. And I think that my loss of my son helped me become more gentle, um, and patient with these kinds of people, because you know she was a kid, and like I said, she couldn't help it. But I have a soft spot for kids. I always have. But my own personal loss, you know, it made me a lot more gentle and kind, and even with kids that get in trouble, you know, I'd always try to take a different approach than like, you know, referring to juvenile justice and taking the report and that, you know, that be it. Like I try to talk to them like as a person, like you have your whole life ahead of you. You know, you need to think about your actions and where do you want to be at? What do you want to be when you grow up? And um, so yeah, I mean, I think that that's definitely the most challenging thing that I've been through since I've been in this field.
Without question, I can't imagine anything being more challenging, honestly.
Yeah, but everyone was really supportive. You know, they gave me the time that I needed. And the greatest thing is when I came back, you know, all I asked was everyone treat me like normal. You know, don't corner me and say, "How you doing?" You know, just treat me like normal. And that's what they did, and that helped
Right.
me acclimate back into things. So,
Yeah, that makes sense too, because I think it's our natural instinct when we know someone goes through a traumatic experience or a loss that we want to offer our support and our condolences. But every time that happens, it's almost like you step back into the loss because you're trying to step forward, they're trying to offer support, and you know it's with good intention,
mhm.
but it is a struggle. So, yeah, I'm terribly sorry to hear that. Hey, I said I think that'd be the greatest fear for any parent. So the fact that that happened. I'm terribly sorry. And I
Thank you.
commend your ability to take that tragic experience and be able to utilize it to help other people, though. Now, I want to ask because there's always concerns within the law enforcement community that they protect their own is the blue code, right? And they protect them, but oftentimes what falls by the wayside is the support for mental health, the support for tragic stories. You said your department gave you the time. Was there resources within the department, or was the situation where you just used outside resources to build yourself back up and then go back in?
Oh yeah, they have resources. They actually have an in-house therapist. So even when I was off, I was going to see her every week, twice a week. You know, I and she's like I said, she's inside the department. And this is my previous agency that I was with.
Okay.
But yeah, she's great, and the fact that they have their own room with a couch, like it's like if you went to an office, but it's inside the police department. And neighboring agencies also go and see them inside of that police department because it's called responder support services, and
Okay.
they're pretty much a localized, you know, therapy psychology group that helps law enforcement and their families. So for anything.
I'm glad to hear they have that because I know like you have this peer support network out there, and you're seeing more and more going into the law enforcement fold about those supports. So I'm glad to hear they had that there for you because that's necessary, right? Especially, and I would imagine while struggling with it by going into your department every day and every day, but every other day or twice a week, to meet with the therapist, it was at least bringing you into the space, right? It was bringing you back into your space there. So it was a situation where it was probably becoming easier to step back in 2 months later.
Yeah.
Right. So go to a little more unusual topics, right? Well, because that's certainly a tough topic, but you're back in your home now. You said you're recently married, right? And so husband and wives, we try to figure out how we're going to navigate all the chores of a house. What is the household chores that Officer Mullen hates doing?
Dishes.
Dishes.
I'm fine with everything else but dishes. I don't do it. My husband knows. He don't mind it. So I mean like I'll do it if it gets bad and he's like working a lot. But I don't I have this thing about like wet leftover little bits of food. It just grosses me out. Dead bodies don't gross me out, but that grosses me out. I can't do it. So dishes.
I was going to say, you can touch bodies and, basically dissect the body, a human body, go through all the mortem aspect of it. but dishes are different. That's unique.
Yeah.
So I guess, all right. So I guess that's the one chore in the house you delegate. Is like, you know what? I'll let that pile up. Someone else is going to handle that, and your husband's got it covered. So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. We got a little pack going, so.
Excellent. All right, and then now you mentioned you graduated high school early, 2014, and of course that generation just about 10 plus years ago, right? But if you could choose to live in any era, any generation, what would that be?
Oh, honestly, I would choose probably, I would like to be 20, in my 20s in the 80s, and then in
Okay.
my 30s in the 90s.
Now, was there something about the 80s or 90s that you gravitate to?
Well,
80s was the music. That's all I can say. I can say that being from the 80s music. 80s was the music, right?
yeah. Well, I actually like 70s music too. So I would have enjoyed, being a teenager with the 70s music, being in my 20s with the 80s music and the clothing and the style. And then in my 30s, the 90s, I love the music of the 90s. The grunge rock is my favorite. So,
No,
um,
that you had the Pearl Jam, the Nirvana era.
Alice in Chains, that's my favorite band. Just I would have loved to have been alive whenever they're alive because a lot of my favorite band singers are no longer. So,
But that era, is unique because I remember that transition because you had the 80s with its own different type of music, right? And then you said you got the grunge in it. And then it's like you had the 90s grunge. And then halfway through, I don't want to say the loss of Kurt Cobain changed it, but shortly after that, it would all became hip hop, right? It's just that it was like it hit a wall. And all of a sudden,
hmm
every award show, everything won, everything you heard on the radio was just hip hop. And
yep.
it seems like it's continued for the most part. Nowadays, I question, how many of these artists, I tell my children this, I'm like, I don't know how many of today's artists have staying power 20 years from now, 30 years from now. Like, I don't know who's going to be listening to these artists in 30 years.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know. I mean, the musical creativity is like no longer now. So,
yeah, it's all computer synthesized creativity, I feel.
hmm
So, definitely different. All right, so a few rapid fire questions for you.
okay.
So the topic is just basically their favorites. So, favorite color?
Orange.
Orange, okay. Favorite food?
Yeah.
What's the favorite food?
Pasta.
Pasta. Favorite holiday?
Halloween.
Animal.
Fox.
Binge TV show.
Mayor of Kingstown. I could watch it over and over.
All right, that's it. And this one, childhood actor crush.
Didn't have one.
Didn't have. What about now? Actor crush.
Don't have one.
Don't have one. All right, all right. So, so then if you're going through, then all right. So embarrassing moments happen all the time. Do you have an embarrassing moment, whether from childhood or your career, or something that you feel comfortable sharing with? You say this was the most embarrassing thing I had to go through.
Uh, yeah. I used to lack in the common sense department. And so when I was a teenager, my parents got me and my sister these like light up Christmas sweaters for uh, Christmas Day. And I was staying at my aunt's and they were coming to get me. My parents were coming to pick me up and it was raining and I had on this Christmas sweater. And they were like, well, come on out. We're outside. And I was like, no, I don't have an umbrella. And they're like, just, it's fine. Just run. It's rain. And I was like, I don't want to get electrocuted. And it didn't register with me. And they were like, what are you talking about? And so I think that was pretty embarrassing. I know there's probably several more, but I vividly remember that because they don't let me forget it.
I'm sure that comes up every year at Christmas time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you had the stereotype going then. So you were the smart kid, but the common sense was sometimes not always there.
Correct.
But clearly you've overcome that because, again, in your role as an officer, you have to have a
Yeah.
whole another level of common sense out there, right? So
Yeah.
that's awesome. All right, so now I know you're talking about that aspect. You talked about some of the things in your career, but what is something that you do or something that a skill you have that might surprise folks that don't know? Or even a talent?
Uh, well, I would say that my talent is probably like my little side business. That's about the only talent that I have. I can,
Okay, so tell
I
us about
can,
that. What is your side business then?
so I make art from animal skulls. So
Okay,
I will carve them. I will embellish them in ways. I've actually learned how to crystallize them now. So I just try to make them pretty. It's kind of like a way of turning something that most people will view as morbid into something beautiful. So I'll put leather on them and jewelry, and I just make them into pretty pieces. But I think the carving aspect of it is fairly challenging, and a lot of people don't really know like how I can do that. And I mean, I'm still learning, but I've been doing it for a couple years now. But I would say that's probably my talent, but it's not very hidden.
well, the thing is, I did see some of that artwork that you had there, and I think I told you, I think it's fascinating. It's unique. I mean, I've never seen that done before. I know taxidermists and all that stuff, but this is a whole different side of this. So I guess the question, how did it get started? Like, how did you find this space? Like, did you find a skull one day on the side of the road? You're like, hey, let me see if I can do something. Like, how did you find this space in this area for you?
Well, I like bones. So, I mean,
Okay.
I've liked bones since I was in college. And then I went to an antique store one time and I saw this big longhorn cow skull, and I bought it and I came home, and I like adult coloring books that are like really into detail. And
Okay.
so I was coloring and I was like, I wonder if there's a way I can combine the two, but I don't want to paint on it because I feel like that's easy. So I was like, maybe I can like challenge myself, and instead of coloring in a coloring book, I could take a carving pen and carve into this bone. That's what I did. So
And I would imagine it's a delicate process because even though bones are strong, when they, over a period of time, I would imagine they also become somewhat fragile if you're trying to carve into them, right?
yeah, well, since so my knowledge of like human bones, like I know where, I mean, animal bones aren't terribly different. Um, but I know the sensitive areas on the bone, like where I can go deeper with the carving, where I have to be very gentle. So yeah, I forgot what your question was. Sorry.
No, your answer. I was just talking about how I was mentioning the comment about carving is like getting into that's gotta be because you mentioned the sensitivity of bone. I was thinking just trying to carve a bone can't be easy. I mean, it's just the idea because I'm thinking, and I would have never thought about you mentioned because my lack of knowledge of bones that there's more sensitive areas to a bone than another. I would think if you take out my femur or you take out my tibia, it's all the same. But I guess depending where the bone hits another joint, maybe it's thinner, different things. And again, I'm not going to get into the science of that because I have no clue. But I never thought about, I know certain bones are stronger than others, but I would never think within the same bone there's a weak spot to it versus not. So,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there are like it gets a little thinner around your like on the animal skulls, that it's thinner down at the nose, and but it's thick at the skull cap. So just,
so what was the
you
first
can.
experience like? Did you get a skull from someone? I know you said you saw the longhorn in the store, but how did you come to get the first skull and then try to go ahead and start turning into art?
Yeah, it was that longhorn skull, and
So you bought that
I
one then to mess with it,
yeah,
to make turn it into an art form. Okay,
yep, that's how it
and then
started.
and now do individuals reach out to you and say, I'm trying to figure out, and I'm comparing in my mind. I think I know in taxidermy it's putting it on the wall, but the only time I usually see the skull is in some restaurants. I've seen the jaws of a shark people have for shark fishing, but it's not, the skull, it's just a jaw. So how does an individual like yourself come into possession of it, and how does an individual who wants to connect with you get this done? How do they do this?
So I do have people reaching out to me, and I'll actually restore people's skulls. Like I have some hunting friends that, they'll kill a deer and then they'll want it Euro mounted, or they want it cleaned up and just restored. They find something in the woods. So I do that for my friends, and then I'll have people reach out to me and want me to carve it or whatever. But I have an Etsy shop, and then I've got a business Facebook, and people can reach out to me those two ways. So,
And what would be the name of the business they would search for on Etsy to find you?
so for both Facebook and Etsy, it's Belle Bones Co. So Belle, Bones, common spelling, two separate words, and then co dot.
And then, like I said, we'll have this information all in the show notes too, so people can reach out to you. And is there an email address also they might want to send a message to you on as well?
Yeah, they can send it to. You could probably send it to my personal email for now, which is HaleyBaley080 at gmail.com. I do have a business email, but I don't have it up and running quite yet. So, but I'll give you that information as well.
Okay, yeah, we'll put all that in the notes because, like I said, to me, this has to be a niche market, right? And I don't know what kind of competition's out there because the first time I saw your artwork was the first time I've ever seen anyone do it. Are there others out there who are doing this in the same space that you're aware of?
Yeah, I'm in a couple of Facebook groups, and I don't think that many people do like all of it. I've seen less like leather work on skulls than anything, and crystallization. But I have seen a lot, some people try to pick up the carving aspect of it, and then a lot of people will paint and they'll embellish them with like those little stones. I don't have the patience for that. I'm not doing that. So, but
I have to
yeah,
say, Haley,
there's a,
you're engraving a stone. That's got to take a lot of patience. I mean, engraving a bone has to take a lot of patience too, though.
I know, I don't know. It's different in my mind. I don't know. I just can't imagine like using like tweezers and just going one by one. That would drive me crazy. But no, there's not too many. I mean, most of the people that have bought from me on Etsy have been Colorado and far away, Arizona, like places that are way far away. I think the closest person so far has been maybe Virginia, maybe, which I mean, they're right above us. But other than that, it's been like Texas, Colorado, Arizona, California. So,
So just walk me through the process so listeners know as well. So if I have a skull, well, if I go hunting and I decide, hey, I want to have this skull, turned into another piece of art. Do they mail it to you? They ship it to you? And then you do the
yeah,
work and then you ship it back? Okay.
yep, yep. I try to use the postal service, so they seem to be the cheapest. Um, and I have all my own packaging stuff, so all I have to do, I print the labels and everything here, and all I got to do is just get somebody to send it to me directly, and then I'll package it up, print my label, and just drop it off at the post office and get it back to them.
I guess that's not one of the questions they ask. They usually ask us if batteries, liquids, or chemicals. They never ask if you're shipping bones, do they? Do you have to do
Nope,
anything different with that?
nope. They'll ask if you're shipping ashes, but I nope, not so far. So,
Yeah, I said those are things that you don't think about when you're on an everyday basis. But like I said, it's a fascinating thing. Like I said, you guys have to check out the artwork. Like I said, I've seen some of the work you've done. I've seen the Etsy shop. I know you posted some of it online. It's a unique, like I said, concept. It's a niche market, in my opinion. I don't see much of it. Like I said, I know you're in a Facebook group, you said, but there's not certainly one in every street corner. And it's like I said, it's a space that is there, and for those, in any situation, you have to be a hunter for it, and you could just actually like the skull for an art piece. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
right.
And so that's outstanding. You mentioned early on about doing work with the community and the young lady interaction with. One of the things that I think is that connection that law enforcement officers and police officers have with the community is imperative too. Not just the impact they make in that direct relationship, but I believe it has the ability to have impact years down the line, especially if a relationship is cultivated, because that individual, we reflect back and they have a good experience in law enforcement, so that they see a law enforcement officer, they don't think negative, they don't think bad, or they have friends who have bad, bad ideas. And they might think,
Yeah.
you know what? Officer Mullen treated me well, and she talked to me like the person. I don't want to get in trouble because she gave me an opportunity, so I'm going to walk away from that situation. And I think that's phenomenal that's happening. Now, if you were to look across either your department or just law enforcement community in general, what do you think are some of the ways that law enforcement can build those strong bridges with the community. What do you think is some of the best ways to make that happen and connect with them? Particularly even the
Uh,
youth, because they're, I think, are the ones that we have to really impact the most, because they're the ones who are going to, push this positivity forward.
yeah. Talk to them about, their future. Ask them, what's your plans? What do you want to be when you grow up? Like, just talk to them like you are their family. Um, but I think the biggest thing, even with not just juveniles, is discretion. I love discretion, and I think that there's more officers that should utilize it. Um, you know, we are here to enforce the law, but we have that beautiful thing called discretion, and you can totally imprint on somebody's life, make them have either a bad or a great outlook on law enforcement just based on discretion. Now, I'm not saying, let everybody go for everything, but, for something that's piddly and they don't get in trouble and they just made a mistake, talk to them, see if like, hey, did you make this mistake because of this outside factor, or this, like what's going on? Like, just kind of get to know them as a human. Don't just view them as like a subject that did a wrong thing and you have to act on it. I mean, there's so many times that I could have acted on something, but I'm not going to ruin somebody's life over something petty, because they could hate officers and then they could turn around and try to kill a fellow officer one day because I made a bad impression over something small.
Yeah, that's so true. I think that you hit, you know, several key factors with that last part you said there. Your interaction with them could choose for them to be bad towards any law enforcement officer, because they're basically, it's a single brushstroke, right? So one negative reaction is perception, they're all bad, which we know
Mm-hmm.
that's not the case, but that would be what someone could interpret. Yeah.
Right.
I appreciate those you sharing that. I know you mentioned this earlier, but doing it all over again, it would always be law enforcement, no matter what.
Uh, I think that if I had the opportunity to go on to be a medical examiner, I probably would be that.
Which
So
you still could potentially become.
I'm too old now to even try, but thank you.
And then, one of the things that we like for community members, everybody is out and about in the community. And we always tell people to be, aware and be safe. But what is something that you would say to all individuals as a safety tip that they should practice?
Lock your doors, lock your car doors, lock your house doors, just lock it. I mean, so many crimes are preventable by just locking your stuff down. Put your guns in a safe place. You have children. There's no reason why you should not have some safe storage method. So yeah, I mean, just pretty much lock your stuff down.
No, I think that's a great tip. And I remember years ago I was talking to a sheriff, and he said they were having a lot of break-ins in cars in a neighborhood. And they eventually caught the individuals, and they asked them, how did you pick and choose the cars? They said the doors were unlocked. They were just walking down the street and lifting door handles. Whenever a car was unlocked, they grabbed something out of the car, and that was it. It was just that
Yep.
simple. There was no real strategy. I guess it was a strategy, but there was really no sophistication to the fact that people didn't lock the car doors.
Yeah, exactly. There was a time, a few years ago, there was like 30 plus car break-ins in one neighborhood, and they they never broke in. There was just that many unlocked cars. I, I live in the country, and I still don't leave my car doors unlocked. I just won't do it.
Yeah, that
So,
was actually, I was just going to ask you, because you mentioned living in small towns. And in the old days, small town America, people left the front doors unlocked. But even now,
mm-mm.
we tell people, I don't care how small your town is, lock your door.
Yeah,
Yeah, so, and then it doesn't take, much work to do it either. It's
nope, just a
just, yeah, literally, click, done. Well,
yeah.
Haley, it's been a pleasure having you on and speaking with us today. We love this idea of getting to know local law enforcement officers. You shared stuff about yourself that, is some great stories, some tragedy you overcame, and then the business you're doing, I think is outstanding. I said it's unique. It's an amazing art form that I've never heard of. So I really appreciate you sharing the time with us today and speaking with us. We're going to put in the show notes the information, like I said, the contact information, the website information, so individuals looking to learn more about your artwork or potentially even have any skills they have created into a new art form and etched and designed with no bedazzle, though. They're going to do the
No bedazzle.
No bedazzle. So I really do appreciate you taking the time for joining us today and being a part of the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoyed being here.
Yeah, absolutely welcome. I just want to say, as always, stay safe and God bless, Officer Mullen.
Yes, sir. You too.
Once again, we would like to thank Officer Haley Mullen of the Laurel Park Police Department for taking the time to join the Your Positive Lens podcast today and participating in our Getting to Know Your Local Leo episode. To find additional information regarding Officer Mullen's creative business, Belle Bones Company, you can find her contact information and links in the show notes. As always, we thank all members of the global law enforcement community and thank you for keeping our citizens, streets, and towns safe. God bless. If you liked this episode, follow us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast. Provide us your feedback in the comments and leave us a rating or review. We truly appreciate your opinion. And then follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook to get all the latest updates. Remember, you can always find places that will share negative law enforcement news stories. But here, at Your Positive Lens, you will only find your positive law enforcement news stories. Once again, I'm your host, Scott T. Thanks for listening, and we'll capture you on the next Your Positive Lens.